All right, welcome everyone to the next USU community meeting. Joining me is Peppy and Ephemeral, and today's topic is mostly about leaderboards and especially with a new scoring system, how we're going to have cross-compatibility between our new scoring system and the new version of the old scoring system, Score V1, like basically the new version of Score V1, and also how what is left to prepare for release of lazer and have it actually submitting scores and gaining pp. So for context, lazer does have a new scoring infrastructure. So Pepe, can you tell us exactly what that means, the scoring infrastructure?
Yeah. So until now, we've been quite restricted by the way scores are being stored in the database as to how much new data we can add, as we want to, potentially track things like the number of times the users paused during playing a score, or adding new statistics, or changing existing statistics. It's because of the way scores were stored. We were kind of stuck with a certain model, and making changes would take days of database migrations. So we've rejigged everything, and all of the laser side of things is already using this new infrastructure to store things, which is a lot more flexible. It allows us to, have the ability to change things very fast, and also means that it's fixed a lot of things along the way, like being able to potentially have the user have a different total score, a top total score from a top PP score. So the cases where I think people call it like PP is greater than score or something weird, but the case where a good PP record gets overridden by a score, things like that, we fixed along the way. So it's a lot of it's a new infrastructure that fixes a lot of the issues we've had until now.
So on the topic of laser's current abilities to submit scores, just to sort of clear things up and get everyone on the same page. So what does laser's current score submission system look like? Like what is laser already capable of and what is it already doing? And then what is left to set up before we can release it as the new main client where we're gaining PP and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So currently, the new stuff which Laser's using, the way it works at a high level is that Laser will submit scores to OSWeb, which get pushed to a queue, and then there's processes which run on that queue to do things like increase the play count of the user's profile, increase the playtime, the all the statistics that the user has, the 300 counts, the rank counts. These are all processes which are working. Um, the processes which are remaining to be done are medal awarding, and the playtime processor is something I'm currently looking at turning on. We've had it ready for a while, but it hasn't been going. So laser scores are being submitted. They're being stored with all their statistics, more statistics than we've had available to us until now. PP is being calculated for the scores. All this stuff's being done, but it's not being shown anywhere yet. So the remaining pieces, the second part of your question, is that we need to decide how we are going to show this going forward, how it's going to integrate with the existing systems, whether we have classic scores, stable scores next to laser scores on the same leaderboard, or whether there will be two leaderboards to start with. Yeah, the remaining pieces is mostly a balance game, like figuring out how this is going to be displayed to the user and how the community will best accept the way we go forward with things. Most of the actual behind the scenes infrastructure stuff is ready to go.
So to clarify, if I open laser now and I set a score, even though it's not showing up anywhere, it's still being stored in the database and that score will end up showing on my profile and on leaderboards whenever the infrastructure is set up and once we figure out the nitty gritty of it.
So the first part is the scores will show up in your recent plays only. They won't show up in your top plays. So that's the difference there. Whether they actually attribute, like, I guess the main thing is whether they'll give you PP in the future for scores you set today. Probably not, because we don't have the correct verification checks on scores to make sure they're not cheated or anything. Um, but we'll work. We'll award PP for and stats for the maximum range of scores we can. So for instance, the thing I just mentioned about playtime not currently being incremented, that will apply to all laser scores until now from like the last 2 years. Once we get it online, it automatically goes back through all scores that have been set to, until now, and re it basically upgrades the version of the processing of the score. So they'll have the new version which has playtime also accounted for.
So there are a couple questions that we still basically need answers to, and this is regarding how laser scores are going to show on the stable client. So for context, just because laser starts submitting scores to your profile and leaderboards doesn't mean that the stable client is completely going to die. So we do have to keep cross-compatibility in mind, and having laser scores show up on stables leaderboards is a part of that. So the first question here is, do we want to list laser scores on the stable leaderboards, but just not have the replay data? Like, should we only have the replay data on the laser client itself?
Is that a question aimed at me?
Uh, yeah, so
Yeah.
I would say it makes most sense, especially with mods like the random mod. So I assume that the random mod basically recalculates the map on the fly based on whatever seed is stored. And that doesn't really seem, even if even if that wasn't the case, I don't think mods like the random mod would be able to have replay data on stable. But
Yeah, so there's a few pieces here because there are mods in Laser which cannot be displayed on stable, right? Even if we did have the replay data available.
right, right.
So that's like out of question. But yeah, the question is like, do we want stable to show laser scores at all, or are they only going to be visible on the website and the game? I mean, that's the probable path because getting them to display in stable is going to be hard, but it ties into probably one of the other questions you're going to bring up is like, how are we going to integrate the leaderboards together, right? How are we going to get stable scores and laser scores on the same leaderboard? Because that is the eventual goal, I think.
Right. And with that in mind, so Laser has basically its own newer version of Score V1, which we refer to as classic scoring. Is that
Yeah.
correct, right?
Yeah, so in Laser it's called Classic Mod. It's actually a mod you apply, and also all the scores from stable show up automatically with Classic Mod applied to them in Laser.
So another question that we are trying to figure out is, should we have a classic only leaderboard basically, where like on the stable leaderboards, where we can show laser scores that used the classic mod, but then not the actual like new scoring system laser scores? And also, should we to what extent should we recalculate old scores into the new classic scoring so that they can coexist on stable leaderboards?
Yeah, exactly. So the way we've engineered everything is that we can actually go back and recalculate all classic scores um to be displayed in the same way as laser scores are. So they'll be basically one to one for classic mode. They can be displayed next to each other. The question is whether we want that and to what extent we want that. And like whether this, so I have a few ideas. Like let me try and simplify this. There's a few different paths we can take forward.
Oh,
One is that we can,
if I can interrupt you, so
yeah,
just to make sure people start getting their opinions in, because a big emphasis on this meeting is hearing your feedback. So if you guys are listening live, there's a text thread in the community meetings channel towards the bottom of the server. And please, whatever we're talking about, please give your opinion if you would prefer things to be one way or another. That is one of the main reasons why we're doing this. So yes, please give your input. But while that is coming in, Peppy, if you had some things to say.
yeah, and also just keep in mind that this meeting isn't about um telling you how things are going to be. It's more like giving you an idea of how things can possibly go, the directions we can take things going forward. Because I am actually interested to. I'll probably do a follow up survey on this, but this is just giving you the information to hopefully make an informed decision on like what you as a player of us see as the best direction forward. And people are saying, like, I'm surprised that it's being considered this would be added to stable because it's feature locked. But keep in mind that, like, we have to move forward, right? Stable is going to be the new stable is going to be laser at some point when the majority of the community move over, and we don't want to split the leaderboards into two. At least I don't think we do. But maybe that's what the community wants. We can always consider that if that's the best direction people see, but not sure. Anyway, yeah. So give me here's a few options we have. One is that we can have uh, when Laser starts submitting scores to a leaderboard, we can have two leaderboards next to each other. We can have one which only shows scores from stable and one which only shows scores from Laser, and that's that. All the Laser classic scores would be on the Laser leaderboard, and all the stable scores would be on the stable leaderboard. The second option we have is we can display all laser scores which are set with the classic mod in the same leaderboard as the stable scores because they're basically the same thing. And that gives us a path forward to being like, well, there's this the stable scores are always going to still exist, but they're going to have the classic mod applied to them. And if you want to compete directly with them, you apply the classic mod and you get onto that leaderboard. The third option is that because going forward, we're like considering that maybe a lot of people will be sorting the leaderboards by PP rather than total score when they're just looking at them. And if we have every single score having a PP value, then we can just assume that they can be compared to each other and have a single leaderboard with all classic and all laser scores. So yeah, do we want like no integration, partial integration, or full integration of the two different versions? Are the three top level, like high level options that I see.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can get more nuance from there, but yeah.
A lot of people are mentioning this really is a matter of like how much do we want to promote people to stay on stable if we're considering having scores coexist on the stable leaderboards.
Yeah, and that's an important consideration because it's not just people that it's not that we want to force people over to laser, and it's not that people are going to stay on stable just because they prefer it. There's also going to be people that can't switch to laser because of technical reasons. So whether the performance isn't good enough for them yet, or whether they're on a Windows version that isn't supported by laser. And similar to stable fallback, we want to keep stable around as long as those users need it. Like we don't want to screw anyone over by having system requirements increase beyond what they can support, what they can run.
Right. So Akai is joining us. Hopefully I'm saying that right. You had a thought basically about how the stable leaderboard should be basically changed. So can you basically summarize your thoughts and we can discuss?
Yeah. First off, it's pronounced Asai. It's all
Aside,
good,
okay.
thanks.
Okay. The double A
And
was throwing me off.
yeah, everybody says Akai.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it's even feasible or possibly the direction you want to go to, but I know that you kind of you just clarified this, but I know you still kind of want people to at least try out Osu Laser and like switch as many like members as you can to it. So I was thinking to remove any sort of disconnect when you create your new leaderboard system. That you should also revamp the stable leaderboard system to match the laser leaderboard system. I'm not talking about like standardized scoring though, like you still use classic scoring, but I'm talking about like global rankings and country rankings. You would change it to what you would want to do, like maybe if you make the PP leaderboards or whatnot. Anyways, so it matches what laser does, and then doing this, you'll be able to see if laser scores. You'll be able to see laser scores in stable as well, and you can maybe show these scores by having like a laser mod or some sort of like identification that the score is a laser score, so that people who are still unstable, they'll be up to date with the leaderboards of laser and whatnot. And then if they click on those scores in stable, the scoreboard will show up and whatnot with all the results and whatnot, but they won't be able to see the replay. Instead, you can have like some sort of banner or something that says to view the score, install to the newest version or OSU Laser or whatever you're going to call OSU Laser at that point, and then they'll be
Yeah.
able to click that, be redirected to the web, and
Yeah.
then they can install Laser and then be able to
And I mean,
view
the
those
thing about
scores.
that is that the replays can potentially work. If the laser scores have been set with the classic mod, they can potentially still display unstable.
Yeah,
There's
and that could
there's a
just
few
display as
like
a regular.
remaining questions about how that would be implemented, but that is definitely like that's the path that I was originally, because I've brought this topic up before, and that was basically what I said, is that like I want the leaderboards to be combined the whole way. Which is to say, we're not splitting the leaderboards, we're not having two different ones. They would always be combined, and we would make that display unstable to the best ability we can, without rewriting that game as well. But yeah, the reason like I brought up this discussion in the first place is I want to get confirmation from the community that that's the direction that people see as being the correct way forward. Because over the last month or two, I have seen people be like, "Oh, I actually expected Laser to have its own scoreboard and not be combined with the global leaderboards." So yeah, yeah. But I do agree with what you've just said.
Yeah. And now that you just mentioned that, this might just be contradicting what I said, but when I was thinking about the leaderboards as well, I thought that maybe classic scores would be a separate leaderboard from laser scores, but I feel like that just ruins entirely what I just said. But yeah.
Yeah, well, they can be separate, but are they separate for PP, or are they separate for total score? Because we are planning to promote more of the competing with the same mods rather than competing across different mods. And if classic is a mod, then you're going to be looking at the classic leaderboard, which is people
Yeah, yeah.
competing.
That's what I
Yeah.
meant. Yeah, competing with just classic mods and
Yeah.
then yeah,
So,
okay.
just going back to like a higher level of discussion here, PP is being awarded for laser scores, and the way we're doing the score infrastructure means that we can potentially have like PP attributed to profiles and working in a way which lets people show it in the top ranks, while it's not necessarily showing on the leaderboards everywhere. So the scores can be like hidden in some leaderboards, but visible for the purpose of highest PP for that beatmap for that player. So it means we do have flexibility of being like, um, the leaderboards only show the scores which are set against classic mod, but any new scores in laser which aren't set using classic mod can still give PP, can still show on profiles, but not necessarily like on every leaderboard, on every type of leaderboard display. So what I'm trying to get at is we have the flexibility of um yeah, we have the flexibility of doing things whichever way works best.
I mean, I believe that scores that are set in laser should also just have a leaderboard, you know. It's just not integrated with scores that are set with classic mod.
Yeah.
I mean, you would essentially have a leaderboard for every single mod combination, except
Yeah,
like fun
and
mods, because fun mods don't change anything except just visual stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that's all I really wanted to say.
Yeah, cool. That's like that's one opinion, and I think a lot of people are going to have that opinion. But I want to make sure that like that is the majority opinion, and maybe there's some.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The
Yeah,
only thing I just don't understand how you guys will resolve is variable rate mods. So DT halftime and stuff. If you're gonna show that in the
my
same
God,
leaderboard.
that's a discussion for another day. That's a
Yeah.
can of worms in
Jesus.
itself.
Yeah.
What the fuck
Okay.
do we do there?
I'll be there for that discussion then. All right. Thank you
Cool.
for letting
Yeah,
me
thanks for
speak.
your opinion. That was
Yes,
good.
thank you.
Oh my God, and as we're talking about mods, there's a new one which is currently in a pull request status, which is a mod that adjusts the speed of the song based on how you click. If you're clicking too early or too late, it like speeds up and slows down. Like that's going to be a nightmare to handle for if we're awarding PP for that kind of stuff.
Oh, that sounds very interesting.
So motion sickness, but for your ears.
Oh, it hurt to play. Like it was always going to get merged. And I'm like, this doesn't feel so great. Because it's not like it's supposed to adjust with your speed, right? But it also adjusts if you hit one note really early by accident. It suddenly boosts the speed by 20%. And you're like, what's going on?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, another topic that you had mentioned is basically the list of priorities for what is deemed required for release or not. So, y- so you had written, we already have rough priority-based requirements, but P1 slash P2 can have some crossover. So, first of all, can you basically explain what exactly that means and just elaborate on what?
Oh, that's kind of like an unrelated part of that message I sent you. I probably
Okay,
should have clarified. It's
right.
not really related to leaderboards. It's more like uh, in the laser repository on GitHub, we have a lot of remaining issues which are seen as either like required for release, like people really need this, or this is something which was in stable, but maybe we can release without it. And when I say release, I mean like actually push people to switch across to laser. So the next stage of release for laser is going to be having an option in stable to select it from the release stream dropdown. And when you select it, it will just install in the background and start transferring your stuff across.
Right. So for
Um,
context, that's the where you change between cutting edge, stable, and fallback.
yeah,
Right.
correct. So it'll be stable, beta, cutting edge, and laser as the new one.
Right. Right. Okay. Got it.
Um, And yeah, just this is probably a good time to segue into a little development update of what we've been working on, which is a lot of people have probably seen that Laser now has the local offset for beatmaps. Um, I'm kind of looking at this bucket list I have of things I want to fix before I push Laser out to more users, and a lot of the items on there are things that people have asked for until now, like things like song select having the ability to sort by difficulty, but not grouped by the beatmap set, having it split out per difficulty, so you can get a better idea there. But also like making the skin editor work better, having the ability to skin song select to a certain extent, and just improving the skinning subset of the game where you can more easily combine skins and work with the skin editor and make it easier to like know that it's there, because laser is really like you can customize the whole UI of laser if you know to hit Control Shift S, but it's very hidden, and there's a few other features of laser like that. So another thing is adding uh, a tutorial kind of mode when the game first starts up that runs you through a wizard to set the correct default settings that people may want, like changing the UI scale or changing the scoring from classic to standardized, especially for people coming across from stable, to get them in a good initial state so they have a good experience. Yeah.
All right. So there's one more topic that I want to make sure is brought up, and that is, so I think it's already established that there's some more brainstorming to do on how we will show scores on leaderboards, but I think calculating PP is something that's further ahead in the process. So one consideration is, even if even if scores aren't showing on leaderboards yet, should we still first have scores like saving to profiles and contributing to PP, if that is something that helps with initial rollout acceptance and generally preparing people to switch over to laser? So, and
Yeah.
this is something before you respond, that if anyone is listening, especially to the recording, then please post your opinions probably in the comment section, or ideally, I think we'll have a news post summarizing this meeting's discussion as well. But yeah, what is the current status on
For
that topic?
sure. Yeah, and again, I completely agree with that direction. Like the reason I brought this whole conversation to light is that we are looking for more opinions from the community, and we will do an official survey, but I know people are going to make threads on Twitter or Reddit about this, and we will read all of that. So voice yourself wherever you need to, and we'll look into it. Whether we can actually have PP showing on profiles and maybe also showing the scores in the top scores for that user. I guess that's what you're getting at, yeah?
Right. I think
The top ranks.
anti-cheat, like we mentioned, is going to be
Yeah,
necessary before
exactly. So that's the main blocker here. But that said, we can potentially just to, because a lot of new users are coming in and starting with laser as the first experience of OS they have, especially people on Linux or Mac OS or
right.
even mobile, where this is the only way they can play the game in a sane way. So one thing we can potentially do is have all PP scores under a certain limit counting, because we can pretty much guarantee that no one's going to bother, cheating to get those scores. We can get the ball rolling there and test things out with the lower end of the scores, and then have a cutoff at something like 200 pp or 500 pp, where if you get over that, it's just not counted for the time being.
Right. I think if I had to give my opinion on a threshold, I think something closer to 200 or even 100 is probably good, just as a more experimental first implementation.
Yeah, yeah. And just make it very obvious that that's what's going on in the laser client, so no one feels like they got screwed over by it.
Right. A 101 pp score.
Yeah.
But yes, with that, I think we got out most of the topics that we wanted to. So yes, like we mentioned, please, those of you listening to the recording, I'm sure you've already heard us say this many times, but please give your opinions wherever you find necessary, whatever platform you're most comfortable with, Reddit, Twitter, YouTube comments, or the news post or official survey that is coming out in the future. And yeah, any other closing thoughts, you guys?
Yeah, so I'll just add that I think we discussed this before the meeting started this time, but the current status of things, just as an update, is that everything is being stored in a way we can consume it, all the laser scores. It's just a matter of how we want to consume it. The next step is that OSWeb needs support to display scores from this new storage, and that is currently being worked on by Nania. I can probably see that coming online within the next few weeks. And at that point, we'll start being able to drill down into the details of laser scores on the website, and then we can work from there. So hope in that next 3 weeks or whatever, I would love to hear more from the community on how they want to see the laser scores integrated with the website and the game, and then we can use that as a way to make first steps which aren't going to piss anyone off, to start getting this stuff displayed, and then we can take things step by step from there. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you all for joining. And for a reminder to anyone who does not know the schedule of these meetings are bi-weekly, and if the schedule does ever change, or even if it doesn't change, you will hear the meeting times announced most reliably on Peppy's Twitter, either a day or so before the meeting is scheduled to happen. So with that, thank you all for joining, and we will see you next time.